I would like to call this meeting of the November Saginaw Planning Commission to order. If you are here to present a case, please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and make your presentation. We may ask you questions for clarity or for more information. A simple majority vote of the members present will decide on your request. If you're here to speak in the public comment phase of the meeting, also come to the podium, give us your name and address, direct your comments to the commission, not to other members of the audience. We have no time limit, but, excuse me, I think especially tonight, brevity will be appreciated. Let's begin with a roll call, Mr. Faust.
Rayleigh.
Here.
Zawerko.
Here.
Jones. Doan. Here. Nightingale.
Present.
Bryant. Nash. Hanley. We do have a quorum.
Very good. First item on our agenda is approval of the October minutes. I was not present at that meeting, therefore I'll depend on you to tell me if there are any needed changes.
So moved.
If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion.
Motion's been made.
Support.
Support. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Minutes are approved. Our first item of new business is case 0049, public hearing. This is a public hearing for a recommendation to City Council on the renaming of the Johnson Street Bridge. Anyone who is here to speak to this may do that now.
Oh, okay.
Anyone here to speak for the recommendation on the renaming of the bridge?
Okay, good evening to the commissioners. My name is Evangelist Lorene Jones. My address is 3403 Churchill Lane, Unit 2, Saginaw, Michigan, 48603. I am standing before you this evening to tell you about the outstanding lifestyle and history of Saginaw, Michigan's former first female mayor, Mrs. Wilma Ham McSee, who is indeed respected of so many pastors, church families, and friends. Mrs. McSee has been a devoted member of Tabernacle Missionary Baptist Church for 67 years, where she serves as minister of music. She is married to Deacon Curtis McSee, who is also a member of Tabernacle Missionary Baptist Church. She is a proud product of the Saginaw Public School System. She graduated from Delta College with an associate's degree in liberal arts and from Saginaw State University with a master's degree in supervision and administration. And she graduated from Leadership Saginaw Plus 30. Mrs. Ham McSee is an elected member of the Saginaw City Council serving a third term, the first female mayor of Saginaw, appointed on November 12, 2001, and her term ending on Monday, November 5th, 2007, she served 14 years and she attended 5,563 engagements. And she is also the community liaison person for the city of Saginaw. Mrs. Ham McSee founded the Saginaw Interdenomination Ministries Church 28 years ago, the Saginaw International Mahogany Scholarships 29 years ago, also known as SIMS, where she has been honored 36 times SIMS Scholarship Woman of the Year. Also, she founded the Soul Children. Mrs. Ham McZee has been the president of Hope of America for 8 years, where she too served as executive director for 2 terms. Our former first female mayor was born and raised on the east side of Saginaw, and she presently now resides at 632 Thompson Street in the Cathedral area of the city of Saginaw. I am so very happy and thankful on the Carlisle Street where Mrs. Ham McZee was born, in memory of her father, Deacon Wilson Jones Sr., who passed away 26 years ago, and her mother, Mrs. Evelina Jones, who passed away 4 months ago. I am so grateful for Pastor John Rencher of Zion Valley Missionary Baptist Church and his church family on their property, with the name of Saginaw's first female mayor, her mother, and her father. Thank you so kindly for listening to me, and again on Carlisle Street of Mrs. Wilmer Ham McZee, parents' home. Thank you so much.
To the commissioners, my name is Caressy Grisham. I live on 623 South Wooddock. I attend Saginaw High. I will be graduating. You want me to start over? Okay. I attend Saginaw High. I will be graduating this year. I have been knowing Miss Wilma Ham all my life. Miss Wilma has truly reached out with a lot of respect. She has been a teacher for 28 years and a member of City Council for 16 years, never tiring in her efforts, always willing to give, well known and well respected by young people, parents, and senior citizens. Her theme is Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ that strengthens me. And truly, our mayor has been strengthened on Carlisle Street. She was born by her mother, Evelina Jones, and Deacon Wilson Jones Sr. She was born on Carlisle Street and stayed there for 16 years. Pastor John Rancher has given the approval for the sign on their church property. 363 people have given the approval from the church, family, and friends. We are thankful for the church and the church family. The vision, hope, and prayer of her mother and father, Miss Evelina Jones, died 4 months ago, and Miss Wilma's husband, Howard Leon Ham, died 28 years ago, and after 14 years married to Deacon Curtis McZee. That was the vision, dream, and prayer. Thank you, commissioners, for giving me this time to honor our first female mayor, Ms. Wilma Ham McZee, and a child shall lead the way.
Good evening. Commissioners, my name is Cedric Townsell. I live at 3215 Bertha Drive in Saginaw, Michigan. I serve as the minister to the South 17th Street Church of Christ in Saginaw. I've been knowing Mrs. McHam McZee for a number of years, since 1993. I've known her as an educator. I've known her as a council person. I've known her as mayor. I've known her as a faithful member of her particular church group, and I've known her as a person who loves the city of Saginaw, Michigan. Upon coming here tonight, I was contemplating what I would say. I almost spent $39.99 trying to find out her ancestry, but I said I'm not going to do that because I realized that she must be multicultural in her ethnicity, because she seems to love everybody, black, white, Hispanic, aged, young. whatever the class is, she has affected that group in this city. And many times what we do, we wait until someone is deceased before we recognize their work, their labor, and their sacrifice. And it would behoove the council to consider, this commission rather, to consider heavily the change to honor a person while they yet live. Because I believe strongly that her work in the city, her efforts to help young people and to help the community at large will not stop if this happens, but it would only enhance her commitment, her influence, and the things she wants to see the city of Saginaw achieve. And I really want to say to the Planning Commission, commissioners, if this is a consideration, please consider it with the greatest regard to all of the things I've said, and I hope that you will come to a good decision. I too serve on the Planning Commission in Buena Vista, so I know what you're going through. I also was on the board of trustees there, so I know what you go through in making these decisions. But however, please weigh it the best you can. Thank you very much.
Good evening. To the commissioners, my name is Annie Fields Jock, and I am a resident of Saginaw County. I wasn't born here, but I've been here 51 and a half years, okay? And I am an address in the Carolina street sign. To be installed on the property of Pastor John Rancher and his members of the Zion Valley Missionary Baptist Church. The papers has been signed, sealed, and delivered. Pastor Rancher, he could not be here tonight. He could not attend due to illness. He's in the hospital, and I've asked, please pray for him. This is in memories of Wilma Ham McZee, mother Evelina Jones, and her husband Deacon Wilson Jones, to have this sign installed. I believe that this family is more deserving to have this sign installed. It's an honor, and it's for the woman of God. She is so giving, caring, and sharing, so strong and courageous. I believe what God has for Wilma Jones Ham Z is for her. It can't not be stolen, and it can't be borrowed, and it can't be duplicated. Thank you so much.
Hello, commissioners and everyone. I'm speaking on the concern of the street of Carlisle for the First Lady, Mira Ham. This was my vision, to name a street or bridge after Wilma Ham on Carlisle, after Wilma Ham McZee, for her mother, father, Evelina, and Deacon Wilson Jones. Even people got a bridge or street named after them that didn't do anything. But Wilma has did some of everything in the city of Saginaw, and I know it for a fact. She have helped so many people here in the city of Saginaw. And I just thought that if they can give a bridge or street named after somebody that didn't do nothing, why not get a bridge or street named after somebody that did do something? This was my vision and my idea. My name is Jeanette Byers. I live at 3113 Orange Street in the city of Saginaw, Michigan. She was a teacher, she was a preacher, She was our first lady black mayor. That's history. She helped a lot of people in the city of Saginaw go to school, scholarship funds, and she forever doing something to help somebody. So that's why I'm asking if you could get a street on Carlisle named after her, because I know all the things that she have did in the city of Saginaw. They named a street that of people that didn't do anything, that was homeless. So that's my vision. God bless you. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioner. First, I give honor to God, who's the head of my life. And my name is Alma Samuels, and I reside at 4000 Harold Street, apartment 205, 48601 is the zip code. And to the elected officials and the honoree and all citizens, I just want to say that I'm a member of New Faith Temple Church of God in Christ. Pastor Charles H. Coleman is my pastor, and it's an honor and a privilege to speak on behalf of Mrs. Wilma Jones Ham McZee, whom I have known since she was 14 years old and I was 16 years old, moving to Saginaw at that time. And I still have been a part of her life all this time for 50 years. So it's just an honor that since I have known her and been a friend with her, and to me, and knowing that she is the person that she's always been to me, to my knowledge, she's always been a person very outgoing, treating everyone with respect, with concern for others, her love for her community, for people. It speaks for her. And becoming an educator, teaching, speaking, and singing with a great voice, you know, you can't miss hearing and knowing that if you've known Wilma throughout many places, she is that person always, never changing. Becoming the first African-American female mayor of the city of Saginaw is truly a blessing and a part of history that everyone in the city of Saginaw is to be proud of and will always remember. To the best sum up the 50 years I have known Ms. Wilma Jones Ham McZee is in Proverbs 31, a virtuous woman, and that's you know that everything that she have done during her lifetime and with others, it would praise her in the gates. And at this time, I just wanted to say to Wilma to keep up doing the good work, and to God be the glory. God bless you, in the city of Saginaw. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Patricia Franklin Lindsay. My address is 1222 Kinford Drive, East Saginaw, Michigan, and I'm here today to speak on behalf of Wilma Ham McZee to talk about how she would be a great candidate to have you consider renaming Carlisle Street in honor of where she grew up. Not only was she the first black female mayor of Saginaw, but she's been a pillar in our community. She has always been committed to our youth and the revitalization of Saginaw. Her entire career, she has been a servant. She's very dedicated to our youth. Wilma provides scholarships to them, not only the scholarship, but she also makes sure that if they need transportation, if they need clothing or materials for school, she makes sure they have all of that before they leave. She takes her own personal time to fundraise all year round, and if you haven't received those phone calls, needing help, she doesn't mind reaching out to get the help that she needs. Wilma thought about higher education even before the Saginaw Promise came around, and she has provided a roadmap for our young people to be able to go and get a higher education and to come back into our community and be better citizens and be productive as well. So it would only be fitting that we rename Carlisle so that she, a woman who can have have a road paved for her, so many others can recognize what she has done for the city of Saginaw. Thank you.
I maybe need to make a note of clarity here. Some of you have spoken about the renaming of Carlisle Street. That is not what is on our agenda tonight. Others of you have spoken about renaming Johnson Street Bridge. That is what's on our agenda. Just so we're all clear.
Good afternoon, Mayor, City Council, to everyone that is here. As I thought about what I was going to say, I just wrote some things down from my heart to make it short, simple, and sweet. I have known Sister McZee for over 40 years, and she always been the same. I like that about her. She is a great mentor in our community. I always observe that. That means a lot to our young people. She gives out scholarships. If you think education is expensive, try ignorant. So that's very important. She taught in the public school. That's excellent. I would go there sometime and visit. She was an excellent teacher. She lived on Carlisle Street for over 40-some years. I knew her brother, very nice young man. She also was the former mayor of the city of Saginaw. What I loved about her, she was for everybody. She went on the west side where it didn't matter what she went, what color you were. I always observed that, and that's very, very important. She was a people person. She loved people. Loved you, and there's nothing you can do about it. Yeah. She also was a member of Tabernacle Baptist Church. She loved it, that church. She sung in the choir, and she did most just about everything around there. And thank you very much.
To the commissioners, I want to share with you, this has happened 2 weeks ago, okay? For Carlisle Street, Wilmer Ham McZ. That's me, okay? 632 Thompson Street. Thank you. They have already got a sign for me. What you want me to come right now to vote on me for the bridge, I can't accept it. And that's because Pastor John Rancher and the church 2 weeks ago have voted for me to have the sign right there on Carlisle Street. I am so thankful and so grateful that they thought enough for me to do that. I appreciate the time that you've had right now with us. And I want to say this again to you. This is awesome what they have done for me to do this sign on my name and on my mother and father name. And I'm so appreciative to that. So I just want to thank you for this time.
I'm going to wait, Bob. Good evening, John Millen, 508 West Remington. I am a little unclear as to whether the petitioners have just withdrawn the petition in a kind of informal way, but I will speak to the petition for the renaming of the bridge. Former Mayor Ham McZee's clear record of accomplishment is unchallenged. She has some noteworthy achievements, some historic. But in discussions with other citizens here in Saginaw, it is not their intention that this petition be supported. They think there are more appropriate ways to recognize these achievements in former Mayor Ham McZee. Using one example, not of a city property, but recently we dedicated the Janet Nash Riverfront Preserve under the Saginaw Bay Land Conservancy. And that location and that idea were much more closely associated with Janet Nash. Whereas at this time, I don't see the direct connection between the Johnson Street Bridge and Mayor Ham's service to this community. And that was something shared by other people with me today. There are a number of other ways the city of Saginaw chooses to recognize achievements, among them mayoral proclamations, resolutions of the city council. We have declared something to be someone's day. So I would think that there are perhaps other ways to recognize the achievements of Mayor Ham McZee. Thank you.
That property is not City of Saginaw property. Okay, all right. I just wanted to make that very clear for the record that property is owned by Saginaw Public Schools.
And I just used that.
Yes, yeah. But we had this commission or no other commission had anything to do with that. That may have been up to the SBLC board, but that's not. I just want to make that very clear for the record. Thank you.
Do we have other people to speak to this issue?
Prepared to speak on the issue, but it's no longer an issue. Well, I did the research on Johnson Street Bridge and on Johnson Street itself. My name's Tom Mudd, and I live at 1001 Hoyt Avenue on the east side of Saginaw. But I was prepared to give a history of Johnson Street and, of course, the Johnson Street Bridge, which is the connection. But the very fact that this looks as if it's not going to, they're not going to pursue this means that my doing that would be worthless at this time.
This is on the agenda. Do we?
On the agenda, and you still need to vote on the issue because it is a petition before the commission. And if they decide, the group that was here decides that they want to come back and pursue Carlisle Street, they would have to file another petition in the clerk's office and move on from there.
So, if I understand the legal angle here, since this is on the agenda, we are obligated to vote on it. Yes, we are. So, proceed.
Well, again, my name is Tom Mudd. I live at 1001 Hoyt Avenue on the east side of Saginaw. And I come before you tonight as a member of the city's Historic District Commission, also as president of the Saginaw County Hall of Fame, and also as president of the Historic Preservation Society. When I heard that there was an attempt to change the name of the Johnson Street Bridge, I became curious because I didn't know anything about Johnson Street. So I went to Hoyt Library, and with the help of some of the librarians there, did the research and found out, wow, Johnson Street itself is an extremely important street in the city of Saginaw. And because of its importance, you can't really detach the Johnson Street Bridge from Johnson Street. So here's what I found out. It's named for Daniel Johnson. And Daniel Johnson and his brother Solomon came to Saginaw in 1847 from New York. And they went over and they saw some low-lying land upriver that was just north of the Carlton Bar, what we call the Carlton Bar. Carlton Bar is a sandbar with ships that draw more than 8 feet can't pass that bar. So being a smart businessman from New York, Daniel Johnson purchased the land there and built a sawmill and a warehouse and buildings for his workers, and promptly called it Zilwaukee because he wanted to trick people who were going by boat across the lake to Milwaukee, that working with the boat owners, he could trick these people into coming into Saginaw, and it worked. Almost immediately after he built his sawmill, he built a plank road from Zilwaukee to just across from what today would be the Genesee Street Bridge. And soon there he ran a stagecoach from Zilwaukee into what became Old Saginaw City. He was a very energetic and a very persuasive man with a lot of money, and he decided that first he would live in Old Town, what we call Old Town today, but later on moved his offices as Zilwaukee built up. He had a kind of a visionary idea that he could have enough sawmills to build a plank road from Zilwaukee to Mackinac. He also wanted to build up Zilwaukee as being the real metropolis of the Saginaw area, because all the boats would come in there because they couldn't cross the Carleton Bar. He was also an early builder of a steamboat on the Saginaw River called the Snow. He ran for the Michigan Senate in 1852 and was elected to the Michigan Senate. At one time, he owned 5 sawmills. Even one of these sawmills ran through 7 million board feet of lumber in 1 year, to give you an idea of how large his sawmills were. In 1849, with Gardner D. Williams and with other people who had a lot of money, they came up with the idea to build and dig a canal from Saginaw to connect to the Grand River so that you could go from Saginaw all the way to Southern Lake, Michigan on this canal. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. Zilwaukee Township was organized in 1854, and Daniel became the first justice of the peace. He had so much money, he decided that he would establish his own bank. And he would call it the Bank of Zilwaukee, and he even had all of the currency published for the bank. However, the bank failed. After that, we don't know much about what happened to Daniel Johnson. But what is really important, in addition to this visionary man who came here as a settler in what became Zilwaukee, is the fact that, and thank the people at Hoyt Library for finding this document here. In 1856, Johnson Street got its name. It is one of the first streets in Saginaw to be named other than the Plank Road, which is Genesee. 1855 was the day that East Saginaw became a village, and it was a very humble village with very few buildings. So here we have Johnson Street, 1856, and the man who first purchased land in what became Zilwaukee was named Fitzhugh. And guess what the next street up is from Johnson? It's Fitzhugh. So I see Daniel most likely had his way to pick his buddy's name, in a sense, to be a street there. Now, as I said when I first started, you can't separate the Johnson Street itself from the bridge. They're both very important. And in my head, I'm really glad that this issue came up, because I learned a heck of a lot about Johnson Street and the Johnson Street Bridge, which, by the way, was built in 1878. It was a swing bridge, had a steel span that swung. Then that bridge wore out, and the next bridge was built in 1912, and of course that bridge is gone, and now we have a new Johnson Street Bridge. But the bridge was originally built because there was so much traffic going over the Genesee Street Bridge. In those early days, Saginaw was a bustling place. So, as I said, I'm happy this issue came up. It was fun doing the research. The research I found out was very interesting, and I hope it interests you. And I think we should really take a step back before we start renaming things. We'd better look into the background first of many of these things before we take that step forward in renaming things. Thank you very much.
Do we have anyone else to speak at this public hearing? Anyone else? Last and final call, anyone else to speak on this issue? If not, we'll declare the public hearing closed. And I am open to any comments or questions from members of the commission or thoughts you might want to share.
Am I correct that if you make a motion, you may not vote against your own motion?
No, that's not
Okay, all right. How the motion will be stated. Okay.
correct. The motion should be positive.
Positive, okay.
I will offer my thoughts, maybe to get us underway, which I think actually will wind up applying to both the cases here tonight, and that is that I don't support the proposed renaming, and that I could support a different way of recognizing the people involved here tonight. First, as someone mentioned this in another way, it usually is much more common to rename something, especially a form of permanent infrastructure, long after the person is deceased and their entire life's work is known and can be evaluated and appreciated. So that's one thing. Secondly, there is, of course, the inconvenience in renaming streets, not only from the point of view of the people who live on the street, but also that we would need to redo a number of maps, and this would apply to the streets and bridges that are used at the local level, the state level, and even the national level, because it gets involved in grant proposals where you have to furnish up-to-date maps. And I think over the years, especially those of us who have served on city council know that the feds can pick the finest point to turn down a grant request. Finally, I can support the idea of naming a building, a park, or some other venue for a person, as someone mentioned earlier. We have many good examples of that in Saginaw. We have Hoyt Library. We have the Anderson Enrichment Center. And more recently, there's Thompson Middle School. There is the Roosevelt Ruffin Health Center. So those are my thoughts. For all these reasons, I would encourage the sponsors who came here tonight to take a second look at how these two very worthy people might be recognized in our community. My thoughts.
Mr. Doan, I share many of your thoughts. One of the things that's occurred to me is that to a certain extent this commission kind of has been operating without a whole lot of direction on this particular issue. I understand that the ordinance requires that the Planning Commission, before it makes a recommendation to the City Council, research the petition, looks at the history of it, the impact of it, and makes a decision based on the best interest of the city. But there aren't any details in that, and I, for one, think that this commission needs to develop some kind of policy to guide us so we're making consistent decisions in the future on this kind of thing. For example, whether or not we should approve or recommend to the council the naming of buildings after people. My position on this issue, and actually on the other petition, is that it's in the best interest of the city of Saginaw that we change names, no matter how exemplary the contribution of the person involved is and has been, that this should be delayed for a period after their passing. I'm not opposed to naming streets or properties after individuals who've made special contributions. I'd be open to honoring Henry Nickelberry, for example, who I think made a major contribution to this city. But I think we should be very careful about being caught up in the emotion of the moment. Think, for example, of the emotional reaction of the community to the death of Bishop Ken Untner, and how that, in a different situation, may have been a problem in this regard. Draymond Green, who has brought honor to this city. Who knows whether or not there may be somebody who thinks that something should be named after Draymond. Maybe there should be, but I think we'd be best advised to deal with this kind of thing for some kind of period after the person has passed. I think that's in the best interest of the city.
Thoughts from any member of the commission?
Well, my thought, confused when we had Carlisle being spoken of, the bridge, and to the point, like we have Genesee right now. It's still Genesee Street Bridge, but there's an honorary plaque above, or a street name above it, talking about Norman, I'm sorry, Little. Mm-hmm. The Plank Road. Mm-hmm. You know, myself, I'm not a fan of renaming streets, bridges, but to show an honorary type of designation on that street is my thought. The other thing too is, beyond changing the street name, there's other services that need to be changed. The utilities, be it Consumers Energy, the phone company, the city, they have to do a lot of things to change their records and the cost involved. Mm-hmm. And that was just my thought in this whole thing too.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Other comments? Anyone?
I have a question for Mr. Mudd. You're the president of the County Hall of Fame. Correct. What's the policy of the Hall of Fame in honoring?
Well, it's interesting you brought that up. I brought the most recent book here. There are over 140 names have been added to the Saginaw County Hall of Fame since the inception of the County Hall of Fame in 1964. I'm currently president. I followed Tom McDonald as president in 2001. At our last meeting, we have about 60 secret electors, including the board. And we've noted over the years, we have a requirement that a person be dead 3 years before they're nominated for the Hall of Fame. And at our last meeting, even before all of these other issues came up, several members said, you know, 3 years isn't quite enough, because people are still have that feeling, that emotional attachment to the person without taking a broad look at the person. So I must admit, sometimes in the past, some people have been overlooked, like early pioneers, because nobody knew their name and nobody bothered to read their bio, because as they went through this package of all of these short bios, they said, oh, I know that person, I know that name. So name recognition does play a role. So we're thinking now of changing it even to maybe 5 years, maybe even 7 years, to let the dust settle before we do that. So I was going to bring that up tonight, so I'm glad to have an opportunity. Thanks for the question. I think we're going to change that. You got to wait a while to let those emotional things die down. Thank you.
Further comments? If not, we are ready to entertain a motion to vote on this issue. Do I hear a motion? A motion.
A motion to, in a positive way? A motion to not approve the renaming of the Johnson Street Bridge.
No, the way that you should make the motion is that you would approve the renaming of the bridge to the Wilmer Ham McZ Bridge.
So a motion to rename the Johnson Street Bridge to the Wilmer Ham McZ Bridge.
Is there support? Support. All right, it has been moved and supported that we basically approve the petition before us to rename the bridge. All those in favor? All those opposed?
Aye.
The motion is defeated. Our next case is case 0050. This too is a public hearing for a recommendation to City Council on the renaming of 2nd Avenue. Anyone here to speak to this issue?
Hello, my name is Joyce J. Seals. I live at 2559 North Woodbridge, Saginaw, Michigan, 48602. Let me say before I do my prepared statement, I was very disappointed that before we could make our presentation, you were always discussing the issue. I just was very disappointed because I would at least like to make my case before you have lumped us with the previous speaker and made it seems like already an arbitrary decision. I'm very saddened by that undemocratic process. I'm very saddened by that. And I'm hoping that at least you'll hear me out, because I disagree that someone has to be dead in order to be recognized. At 88 years old, we're going to be talking about Reverend Austin. He's 88 years old. He's outlived a lot of people. 91. 91, excuse me, 91. So he's outlived a lot of people. So he's way past that age where you say he's got to be dead before he's recognized. I would love for him to be able to see something positive. But I've come tonight to honor a man of renown, a recognized leader, a caring and compassionate servant, a man of the highest integrity in this community. For over 60 years, Reverend Roosevelt Austin has served as a champion for the city of Saginaw and its citizens. He was a pastor for 44 years, but he quickly recognized that there was much more to be done in this community than inside that church, and he came outside of the building and began to do some work. He saw gaps in services in our community, and what he did is he brought people together. He was part of the creation of the OIC of Metro Saginaw, which helped many thousands of individuals in this community get jobs, acquire great skills, GEDs, high school diplomas. He did all of that. He also worked with other pastors to organize organizations that help people in need. Right now, I am the volunteer executive director of the Good Neighbors Mission, which he helped create over 40 years ago out of his church because he saw a need. He served on city council, as you already know, and many other boards and committees to support the city at all levels. I can tell you in organizations that I have worked with in this community where we needed money for Houghton Jones, for our summer programs or other things, I could go to him on these boards, and he was a strong advocate, and he got the money we needed for our communities. To me, he personifies commitment and dedication to the city of Saginaw, and it is only fitting that we should leave a lasting legacy of his innumerable contributions by naming a street in his honor. I want to say that I was fortunate. I'm 68 years old, and my father was pastor in my church, and back in the day, you had to have a pastor's support as a reference. So Pastor Austin was my reference when I was 14, 15, 16 years old. And so therefore, guess what? Anytime I applied for a job, guess what? I got it. Because people recognized who he was and how he had such high integrity. So I'm hoping that you will consider, I know what you said a few minutes ago, but I hope that you will not lump everybody together. This man is a man of the highest integrity in this community. And I want to make sure while he's alive that we honor him, that we're just going to put some flowers on his coffin, but we'll do it while he's living and see that, you know, all this input and all the seeds that you plant in this community are going to bring forth a great crop. Thank you very much.
I say good evening and thanks to each of you, and I too agree with Mayor Sears. I was very disappointed in that process, the way it was. I'm Rosa Holiday, 6261 Greenview Place in Bay City, 48706. I'm here to speak on petition 1726, renaming 2nd Street, starting at East Genesee, going to Washington Avenue, to Roosevelt Austin Boulevard. And doing this, as the mayor said, Reverend Austin is a man of God. He's a long-time humanitarian who has continued profoundly to change the lives of many people, and not just people here in Saginaw, or not just people on the east side whatsoever, all people, even people all over America actually, because many people that Reverend Austin has helped, and he continues to help because he continues to work. He continues to serve on boards. He can't do boards around the state anymore because of his age, like we are. We are getting older, so he's not able to travel as much. But his main focus, well, of course, in the ministry, but not just that, he always looked at the disadvantaged individuals. He always looked for justice, and justice for all people, love for all people, and caring for all people. And we don't find too many people like that, even in the history, not like Reverend Austin has. He continues to serve this community. He has kept this community together, and also on his boards, as Mayor Seal spoke of, he's brought revenues to the city, back to the city, from the boards that he served on. He served on the board of Sucker National Bank boards. He helped a lot of churches build, helped a lot of people get houses through those boards. A lot of local, brought monies back to the local boards. And it's just, and now he's currently our pastor emeritus of Zion Baptist Church, which he pastored that church, and we're located on 2nd and Johnson Street for 44 years. And as I say, he's still our pastor emeritus there. And he also lived on that street, as was when we went door to door asking for support. Everyone supported this. Even one family that had moved there in, I believe they said 1947, and they are still there and support Reverend Austin. Now that street doesn't have that many businesses on it, and it's not that many addresses on that street, homes where they live. And the people that are there, they are just anxious for him to come there. And we are, and we are going to build that area, build up that area as a result of that. And so I am asking that it's just no more appropriate and fitting to rename 2nd Street as Roosevelt Austin Boulevard, and the community will benefit from it. In fact, the community rejoice over that. As I said, we'll bring in revenues for this. And I really hope the board, you guys would really consider that. And I really thank you for your time. Thank you.
John Millen, 508 West Remington. I just wanted to briefly mention on this petition that it's been my experience looking at Saginaw's history that the renaming of a street, especially a lengthy street, is a very rare honor, and we've reserved it for special and often the ultimate service to the community. I can think of one instance where a fallen police officer had a section of street renamed for him. So I would just recommend looking at this petition and doing that very carefully. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Terry Pruitt. I'm not here tonight, as many of you might know, attached to the NAACP. That is not my mission. And let me speak directly to this petition and ask that you give it your positive support. I am someone who has known Reverend Austin for literally all of my life. I grew up at Zion. I can remember when he was appointed the pastor of that church. But beyond that, I'm a former city employee, and I owe my employment in City Hall to Reverend Austin. I'll comment further on that in just a moment and tie that together for you. But this is a man that has been a unifying voice in this community for more than 60 years. This is a man who, in 1968, when this city was being torn apart, stood on the street corners and pulled this entire community together. So he's been a unifying voice. He's been an immense supporter of this city. And I guess this idea that somebody has to be dead before we recognize their efforts and what they've done and the contributions they've made to a community, I guess I just don't buy into that. I think it's critically important that people who've done the kinds of things that he has done. I was a part of the OIC board and worked very closely with him. I spoke with Reverend Austin today, in fact, not about this, but about another project that he's working on, and he asked my advice when I have gone to him on numerous occasions to ask his advice. Let me go back to my employment here at City Hall and how and this is just an example, it's my personal story, but I would think that my story is very similar to the stories of many others that he's assisted. In 1976, I was appointed the director of the Model Cities program and was the only African American department head in City Hall. And I was only 26 years old. But it took me a year and a half to get to that position because the city manager and the mayor told me that they would never make the appointment. Now, it just so happened, because of a special set of circumstances, for about a year, I was in the position of being the acting director. But I was told that I was too young, didn't have the experience, and not to even apply because I wouldn't be considered. Well, after a year of working as the acting city department head, 26 years old, supervising a staff of almost 20 people, for the third time in about an 18-month period, the city was going through the process of hiring a director. And I sat down with Reverend Austin and Reuben Daniels at the time, and I said, you know, I've got all the confidence in the world that I can do this job. And in fact, I've been doing it, and I can't get those who have the ability to make the appointment to consider me. And I want to ask you to talk to them on my behalf. Reverend Austin immediately picked up the phone and called the city manager and asked him to reconsider his position, which he did. Long story short, I was given the appointment. I served as a city department head for 2 years before I left, and many of you know, I know Jim Doan and others know, that I eventually went on to have a very successful career at Dow Corning Corporation as a manager up there. But I can point to hundreds of
young men and women who were in similar situations when Reverend Austin picked up the phone, made a phone call, and made something happen. I can recall in 1968 when the city was being torn apart, him pulling pastors and leaders and bankers and people all across this community together to stop the rioting and to restore this community to a safe condition. I want to ask you to rethink the conversation you had earlier. I don't think that one of the criteria has to be that a person has to absolutely be dead for 5 or 7 years, so whatever that magic number is. I think we have to look at the merit, the work, and the contributions that individual has made to the community. And absolutely there are some people who are extremely deserving, even as they yet live, of some sort of honor. And I think the renaming and the work that he put into rebuilding that church on 2nd Street and investing in property on that 2nd Street to redevelop it speaks for itself. He is 2nd Street for a lot of people who live in that part of our community. So I'd ask you to reconsider your position and to support this petition. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Paul Versiglio. I live at 2035 Vernon Street in the city of Saginaw. Good evening, Mr. Faust. How are you this evening? Most of us have engaged in street or bridge naming conversations in different contexts over the years. In doing so, we must consider some standard naming procedures adopted by cities across the country. Some are: only name streets or bridges for deceased people, only use names of admired people, recognize substantial individual contributions. If possible, avoid changing the name already on the street or bridge. Be prepared for controversy over naming choices. Yes, street and bridge renaming can be controversial because of a dislike for the new name, the changing of a respected traditional name, or confusion from altering a familiar name used in city travels. It is also controversial because it is seen by many as a way to rewrite history. Renaming a street or bridge is about claiming a certain voice and a certain power over how a city looks. Every act of street and bridge naming is pregnant with meaning. It is about remembering a specific person, as was done with a flurry of renaming streets after Martin Luther King. Cities also face significant costs to renaming streets and bridges. Costs include updating websites and maps, notifying emergency responders, changing street signs, notifying mapping companies, and notifying the U.S. Postal Service and package delivery services. Additionally, changing a name also impacts residents and businesses. They must change addresses with friends and family and business contacts to ensure timely delivery of mail. Also, residents and businesses must be in favor of the change before the city considers imposing these costs on them. So when considering renaming streets and bridges, consideration must be given to the cost, standard procedures, and preserving the history of the street or bridge. However, there is another way. Utilizing honorary dedication policy could allow the city to honor deserving individuals without requiring a change to the official city map. An honorary dedication policy has been used across the United States to recognize important community members. The power of an honorary dedication naming lies in its ability to incorporate history into everyday life and avoid the confusion and costs of name changes to the official city map. Yes, Saginaw has many worthy people. Yes, We can recognize their individual contributions, but we must remember to avoid changing the name already on the street or bridge and preserving history. And streets and bridges should not be named for people who are still alive. A prudent course of action may be to consider using an honorary dedication policy to recognize the legacy of Saginaw's civic leaders. Thank you all for your time. Appreciate it.
Good evening, Commission and everyone. My name is Willie Haynes, and I live at 1800 Morgan Street, Saginaw, Michigan, 48602. Before I go any further, I must try to clarify something. 2nd Street is only about 7 or 8 blocks. I had some information I was going to read about Reverend Austin, but what I heard this evening concerned me. 7 or 8 blocks, that's what we're talking about. And what I did, I wanted to get a feel of the community in the area where Dr. Roosevelt Austin served and pastored for more than 40 years. What I did, I went down every block. I talked to the residents who lived in that area. You have one business on that block, on 2nd Street. That business is right there on Genesee and 2nd Street. The address is 220. It's a car repair place. I talked to those individuals. They was overwhelmingly, they definitely wanted the name changed to Reverend Roosevelt Austin. The next business, the next place to that is a church, Gideon Christ Community Church. I talked to the pastor there and the congregation. They want the streets changed to Reverend Roosevelt Austin. And then you start talking about Federal, Lapeer, Tuscola. There's no businesses or homes there. Nobody lives there. If you have one house down the street from 2 houses down the street from Zion Church, and they are vacant. And then I heard something about Fitzhugh earlier today. Zion stops at Fitzhugh right there. Fitzhugh at the back. The parking lot stops at Fitzhugh. Then you goes to Potter Street. You go to Potter Street, you don't have anything. From Wadsworth to Potter Street, you have 3 homes there. And I talked to one of the residents there. They are in favor of changing the name too. I go a little bit further, Church Street to Washington. And what I found out this afternoon at 2 p.m., a family by the last name of Culpepper. I talked to their family members. One of the members' name is Gloria Culpepper. She lives at 1006 North 2nd Street. She told me her family have been living on 2nd Street ever since 1947. She grew up in that house there. Her family is definitely in favor of this. She wrote this letter saying it's okay to change the street to Reverend Roosevelt Austin Boulevard, and she also signed it. So my research saying that the people on 2nd Street are in favor of changing the street. So I just wanted to bring this to your attention. I had some information I wanted to read to you about why we should change to Reverend Roosevelt Austin Boulevard, but this group have already discussed that. But I just want you to know that the people on 2nd Street who lives on 2nd Street saying yes, change it to Reverend Roosevelt Austin. They realize the commitment he have made in this community. And like I said before, a person who's been living at 1006 North 2nd Street from 1947, they have been there a long time, and they would like to see a change. Thank you. Please consider this. And I would like to say this here. I heard some things this evening that concern me. I'm a person that believes in faith, and I believe give a person their flowers while they live. Don't wait till a person pass away, then you honor him. Then we're always saying good things about a person when they pass away. But when a person is living, we say a lot of bad things about him. This is an opportunity to show love to an individual who have been working hard in this community for years, for over 60 years. He has been working in this community awful hard. And it's only a couple blocks. Couple blocks. That's all I'm saying. And most of the blocks, they're vacant homes. There's no one business right there by Genesee. One business. That's a car place. So please consider this. Open up your heart and consider this. This is something that sometimes we have to honor people for the work they have done. Let their work speak for them. Thank you.
The Mudd family and Reverend Austin go back a long way. My father, Dr. Richard D. Mudd, often associated with Reverend Austin and held him in extremely high regard. So certainly I would go along with my father always spoke so highly of Reverend Austin. But we have a problem here, and the problem has to do with precedent. If you start changing a name on 2nd Street, what's going to happen to the people who say on 3rd Street, well, that's just a number? What happens on 4th Street? What happens on 5th Street? What happens on 6th Street? In other words, you set a precedent in other people who know somebody who has done great things for Saginaw and is still alive and said, well, you did that for Reverend Austin. Then you can see the kind of corner you're going to be pressed into as a planning commission and our city council. I was interested in this Saginaw News article from November 5th, 2017. We all remember Sam Merrill for years and years and years on TV5 newsman on television, and he passed away very suddenly. They went and they decided to do something in his memory. So the members of the Kiwanis Club of Saginaw Northwest are raising money for the Sam Merrill Memorial Pavilion, the pavilion to be located in Saginaw Township North. So there are other ways to honor people other than renaming streets and bridges. And again, you do this and you set a precedent. Thank you.
Do we have anyone else to speak to this issue? Is there anyone else? Third and final time, do we have anyone else to speak at this public hearing? If not, I declare the hearing is closed. Members of the commission, you can entertain thoughts that you might have.
I just have a question. Who's paying for all the street signs that need to be changed?
States that the petitioners will pay that cost before any street signs are changed. There's an estimate for the street signs alone of $2,508 for 2nd Street. There will be some other administrative costs, such as the mailing of we mailed to everyone who owns property on 2nd Street. There was also an ad placed in the Saginaw News. Those would be covered. There are probably some small costs from the engineering department. I didn't know this until this whole process got started, that there's a national list of bridges, and there's a state list of streets. There's a federal list of certain streets. Some of those affect some of the funding that comes into the city, but those would have to be changed so that it reflects what's actually in the city. So those are costs that would all be borne by the petitioners before any signs went up.
Clarification, the petition deals with that part of 2nd Avenue from East Genesee to Potter Street.
Actually, there wasn't another petition filed that was typed. that took in all of Second Street, including the 2 blocks, yes. From the notices of Second Street, thing from anyone until late this afternoon, when I received 2 letters in my mailbox that you all got a copy of. Both of those were opposed to the renaming, but in every conversation I've had with people, everyone speaks about Reverend Austin with nothing but praise. Everybody, but they don't want the name of the street changed. One of those notices was from, or one of the letters today was from a church that said they have been at the corner of 2nd Street for over 165 years, and they're known as the church at the corner of 2nd and Federal, and they did not want that changed. And they said that, but they said it's known as the church, and they spoke very highly of Reverend Austin as well.
Well, I will add maybe a few more thoughts. I want to assure everyone here, and unfortunately the people who are no longer here, that we are definitely giving careful consideration to this issue. I mean, hopefully we all recognize that there are legitimate differences here being expressed. We have thought about this a lot tonight. We've thought about it before tonight. Both the people under review here are outstanding in our community. Reverend Austin certainly is. I came here in 1970, and I've heard about him since then. So, you know, we, in our thoughts about what we're saying up here, are far from showing any disrespect to anyone. In my personal opinion, of the issues I talked about, I think the primary one is that there are more appropriate ways to recognize people. We know plaques, we know monuments, we know, as I've mentioned, prominent buildings named for people. So those are my thoughts. Anyone else?
Several calls about this issue and the other issue that we previously had at hand. And I just got to let everybody know that I would say for the bridge issue, I got about 28 calls. But for this issue, people approached me in the community. So, I mean, this is something that I support. I traditionally would not support this if this was anybody else. I mean, I hold Reverend Austin in high regard. In my office in Lansing is a poster size of Henry G. Marsh, because I love the history of this community. And it was stated earlier that somebody would have had to have left an indelible mark in our history, and that is Reverend Roosevelt Austin. The type of people, I mean, from every ethnicity, from every part of the city, even out at Saginaw Valley, people have approached me and asked me to support this. I understand that there's some issues, but I just want to draw that there are very clear contrasts between this and what we previously voted on. So those are my thoughts.
Calls regarding this issue and the other issue. And the other issue is totally separate from this. I didn't lump that in here, and if I came across that way before, I apologize. My whole point is that the cost involved, the city cannot absorb that. The other issue was the utilities, city, Consumers Energy, the phone company, especially the phone company, because they maintain the database for 911 service. And I'm saying that because I used to work for the phone company, and we knew how much that was very important for any emergency responding to a specific address. If the database is not correct, the responders go to the wrong address, and we can't have that. That's regarding somebody's life or any other emergency situation. I have to say that, you know, before we vote on it, I came in with this conscience of, yes, I favor that. I'm just going to say that for the record now. This petition here.
Are there any other comments before we come to a vote?
I just want to make sure that everybody understands this is not a vote on the Reverend Austin. This is a vote on whether or not to change a street name. I think certainly this is a man who deserves whatever honor we can give him, but I'm opposed to this particular petition. I think there are other ways to honor him. And do it now, or do it 5 years from now, or 100 years from now, but he certainly should be honored. But I think the issue here is not honoring the Reverend Austin. The issue is the renaming of 2nd Avenue.
Yes.
What was the process that was used with that? What is it, Norman? The Plank Road? What is that?
That's an honorary.
So how does that, my question would be, how does that process work? And thank you, Tom.
Yeah, the Saginaw Valley Historic Preservation Society wanted to honor Norman Little. He was the one who actually planned and got the sawmill and got the money from New York investors to build the Plank Road from Saginaw to Flint. So, and of course that made Saginaw, the old Saginaw City, not Saginaw City, but East Saginaw, that made East Saginaw grow exponentially, while Old Town Saginaw, that we call today, kind of died on the vine. So Norman Little was really, really important to East Saginaw history, especially by the building of the Plank Road. Originally, that was called the Plank Road. It wasn't called Genesee. It was called the Plank Road. And later on, they changed the name because the Plank Road went to Genesee County. And that's how Genesee Street got its name. Thank you.
My question was more toward Mr. Faust.
The process would be the same. A petition would be filed in the clerk's office to give the street an honorary name. In this case, the petition was to rename the street, but the process would be the same. At this point, it would take any one citizen in the city, any organization, or any business owner to sign a petition. And I believe right at the top of that petition, it says something about an honorary name. So that would be the exact same process. It would be presented to the city council, who would refer it to the planning commission, and we'd have the same type of public hearing. Now, that process, just so you know, may change within the next month or so. There has been a new ordinance that's gone to city council. It's been read to council, and after 28 days, they can take a look at that, vote on that ordinance. The process may change at that point. I believe the biggest change is there may be an upfront fee charged so that to cover some of the costs, the mailing costs, the notices, things like that. The other part of that process is that any affected section of the street, at least 51% of the property owners must sign the petition before it would go forward to council. Those are the, I believe those are the only changes to that ordinance. Oh, there, I think in the ordinance itself then it does say an honorary change of name too.
I just wanted to add something. We did that not so much. We did that because that was the original name of the road. So this, even though it says Norman Little Plank Road, the whole idea was to rename or get back to the original name of Genesee, which was the Plank Road.
Whether we're talking about an honorary dedication or actually changing the name, the dilemma's still there. We don't have a policy. We don't have a policy that will help us go down the road consistently. So whether it's an honorary dedication or the actual name of a change of a name, we still have to deal with that as a commission. We don't, all we have is the ordinance which says we have to act in the best interest of the city. What does that mean?
Right, and that is with the ordinance. It's quite vague. In the 5 years I've been in this position, this is the first time this has come before us. I think that not a whole lot of communities that did some research and so did the city attorney on this issue. We didn't find many communities that had a set process, but I agree with you totally that we should have a process so that if this comes up again, that we handle things exactly the same way. We look at the same criteria and make the decision based on what those list of criteria are.
The public hearing is closed. All right. Yes.
Come up again. Just wanted to add that I do feel your dilemma tonight. I understand where you're coming from. I listened very carefully to what you said, but since the precedence has not been set and you don't have a list of rules right now, you could take a point of order and do something about that tonight, and from this point on, try to put a plan together that will help you make these decisions in the future. But I'm hoping at least tonight, and I'm sorry that we came tonight at the same time the other hearing was going on. We didn't have any idea that was happening, because I felt like you had already made a decision when you did the first one, that we were already, had been tainted so that a proper decision would not be made in our case based on the facts and not of what happened before us. So I just want to make sure that that you are, please consider our recommendations based on the merits of what we said and not anything that you previously heard. I just thank you for that.
If there are no further comments.
I just have one. And I know that the actual case in front of us says Roosevelt Austin Boulevard. A boulevard is basically two streets with the grass in the middle. It's separating, correct? In just semantics, I would say, it's an avenue. So I'm gonna, when you ask for a motion, I want to be the one that submits the motion. Okay?
Submit. Different little volunteer thing that I do some home inspections for the mustard seed shelter. And I did one in Parkwood the other day, and Parkwood is an avenue. And you're right, there should be a dividing grass green strip. Parkwood, Oakwood, they're all avenues.
That's true. Well, before a motion, I just want to say again, we are considering these issues separately. We did not come here with preconceived ideas that cover both issues categorically. Although, again, legitimate difference of opinion, in my opinion, and I think some others, some points apply to both cases. So that's why we have said that. Having said that, I will now entertain a motion on this case.
I will submit a motion, if you don't mind. On case number 170050, that I'm submitting a motion to approve the renaming of 2nd Avenue to Roosevelt Austin Avenue without setting any precedents for future renaming requests.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Mr. Faust, since that is changing the wording slightly of the petition. Is that a problem or not?
No, that is not a problem.
It's been moved and supported.
Clarification.
Yes.
And the copy that I have, both cases are indicated as 170049. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. You're right. Okay.
So it has been moved and supported that we approve a recommendation for the renaming of 2nd Avenue. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nay?
Nay.
Nay.
Mr. Faust, let's have a roll call vote.
Rayleigh. Zawerko. Jones.
Aye.
Doan.
No.
Nightingale.
No.
Hanley.
No.
Bryant.
Aye.
4-3 in favor of
The motion carries. The next item on our agenda is a discussion of the form-based code, which we all have gotten information on over, well, last month. And this would be our time to offer any comments or hear anything Mr. Faust might want to start us off with.
I put that on the agenda just in case anyone had any other comments. I've talked to some of you individually about the form-based code. We're trying to get this finalized in the next week or so. There will be a mailing going out no later than December 5th, which is the timetable that we need to meet the, I think our next meeting is December 19th. It's a week early because of Christmas, so it'll meet that deadline. The notice has already been put in the newspaper, and so I'm just looking for any comments before we finalize this. I know we've been talking about this for over a year, and so, you know, I'm just looking for last-minute comments.
Will it be in the form also of a recommendation by us to City Council?
Or what's that?
We recommend to City Council?
Yes. Because of the holidays, early January, which means that it would take effect after the 28-day layover, and then if they voted in favor of the new ordinance, it would take effect 10 days after that. So we're looking at mid-February to early March.
Any other thoughts on the form-based code?
If you have any comments in a week and a half, please get them to me. I'll be out of the office for a few days. You can leave me a message, drop something off, any other changes that you want to make.
Another question. Is Ms. Duffy still waiting for responses on some of those questions from us?
I'm supposed to call her tomorrow. We'll talk about some things. There are map changes that we want made. I believe that one of the issues was who was going to review new construction. And from the people I've talked to, I believe right now the ordinance says that that would be reviewed by staff. I think the consensus is that that should be reviewed by the Planning Commission, at least from the people that I've heard of, on any new construction. That's, there's a couple other items that they're fairly minor changes. I think that we've talked about this before, that the ordinance will give the Planning Commission a lot more leeway in the design of a building, what it looks like. At one point back when we were having public meetings with architects or with the public, we had talked about maybe in the downtown areas, Old Town and downtown, maybe making that a brick facade, a requirement on every building. The architects were very opposed to that. They said that there were a lot of other materials out there that would still have a very downtown look and a nice look. And so I think the better thing would, instead of having that as a set requirement, is that that's something that the Planning Commission can look at. And that's why I think any new construction should go to the Planning Commission instead of just staff looking at it.
Do we have any old business to come before us? If not, is there anyone here to make public comment further on other issues? I think not. Unless there,
I have a
yes.
comment to add. The Office of Management and Budget is beginning their budget process again.
Well, that's fun.
Yes. So that means that our capital improvement information will be provided to you
Very good.
in December, at our December's meeting, so they give you some time to deliberate over those. So that will be coming in December.
And roughly a time for us to consider and
yeah, we'll have.
comment is what?
Right, you'll have January, and hoping to get that back from you in February.
Right, okay.
Same process of
Same process.
hierarchy?
That's it for me.
There being no further business, we are adjourned.